Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this week we are in Lincolnshire, and we are in the tiny little church of St Michael at Stragglethorpe. St Michael and All Angels, Stragglethorpe. Now, God willing, this should be going out Christmas week, and I'd like to do something special perhaps for Christmas week, and this is a very special building. This is one of the oldest churches in Lincolnshire, and it has one of the best Georgian interiors in Lincolnshire. This is actually an Anglo-Saxon building, probably dates from just before the Norman conquest, or maybe just afterwards, of course. Styles don't change overnight just because the Normans have arrived, in part because English church builders have been getting their cues from the Normans for some time before the Norman conquest. But this is St Michael and All Angels Stragglethorpe. It's a wonderful name, it's a Viking name really. And as we look around, we shall see why this building is so interesting and important. As usual, then, we start at the west end, and you can see here looking east, we have the box pews here in the nave, and we have over there the excuse me, the three-decker pulpit. This is the sort of three-decker where effectively the clerk and the minister have to share the seat at the bottom on the grounds that there is a fairly low ceiling in here, as you can see, to the point that one of the memorials has had to have the ceiling cut away for the top of the memorial to fit. As I say, this is Anglo-Saxon. We have here, this is the Norman font, wonderful Norman tub, bit green. They often are, they often were. The way we see a lot of medieval churches today, they've been rather over-restored by the Victorians. This one hasn't. You can see there these open seats there, and there would have been more and more rustic benches there for the common folk, the ordinary folk, the people who couldn't rent a pew. The box pews, of course, were rented. Now, this is not an awful, this was a way of making sure you actually had an income. You will see on top of the pews there are these candlesticks, and of course that's the only lighting. So if you're having evening services, and of course they do have I'm sure they have a Christmas candlelit carol service, if not, why not? The aisle is a later addition, perhaps 13th century. I mean, look at that window, that's early 13th century window I saw, or perhaps even 12th century. Definite batter to the wall here. The pews, they're a wonderful selection. You can see the ones at the back that are open. These again they don't look like they ever had doors. And they would have been free seats. We have here at the back more seats. And here, and just move around and have a look at that. This is one of the diagnostic Anglo-Saxon features of the church. It's this triangular-headed doorway. The Anglo-Saxons, although they did use rounded arches, they also liked to do this sort of thing where possible. And the Normans didn't like that at all. The Normans thought this was terribly unsophisticated, which of course is means this is a marvellous diagnostic tool for the date of the building. Turn around again. The three-decker. Now, there's no evidence the back seats ever had doors. You will see here that there's a bit of decoration on this door. And the big pew here, this is the big house pew. This is where the Lord and Lady of the manor, the people who lived at the hall, or the manor house, would have sat. And it's right at the front. It's opposite the pulpit. And as I said, this is one of the sort of lower type. These are where the farmers would have sat. One of them would undoubtedly have been actually the pew for the parson. So he would have had his family pew. That's probably this bigger one here, and then one of the farmers here, and there's another rented pew here. Memorial there. That's a niche. Would probably have held a candle at one point. Coming into the chancel, and you can see there is actually no structural difference between chancel and nave. They are created by, the division is created by the placing of the pews and the pulpit. So here's the pulpit proper. This is where the sermon was preached from. And then down here, because this is the lower type, you would have had the parson on one side and the clerk on the other. The parson would have been the side closest to the stairs up to the pulpit, of course, and the parson would have been, and the clerk rather, would have been on the other side, because he doesn't want to climb over the clerk on the way up to the pulpit to preach. And they would lead the service. And so here we are round to the back, and you can see it's a nice broad bookboard there, so that there's plenty of room for both of them with their prayer books, because the clerk leads the congregation. Not all the congregation could read, and so they would repeat after the clerk, while the vicar, of course, would say his part of the service from this side, and of course you have the responses to that. And here we have the communion table. It's placed altar-wise. We come down here, and we have the Earl Memorial, Richard Earl Baronet. And we've got the two generations there, the same family. Stay, read, and observe death's partial doom. A spreading virtue in a narrow tomb, a generous mind mingled with common dust, like burnished steel covered and left in rust. Dark in the earth he lies, in whom did shine all the divided merits of his line. The lustre of his name seems faded here, no fairer star in all that fruitful sphere. In piety and parts exceeding bright, clear was his youth and filled with growing light. A morn that promised much, yet saw no noon, and ever rose so fast and set so soon. All lines of worth were centred here in one, yet see he lies in shades, whose life had none. But while the mother this sad structure rears, a double dissolution there appears. He into dust dissolves, she into tears. He was only 24 when he died. We have a double lance at east window, early English. And here we have the one little piece of medieval stained glass. Look at that. Quite faded, of course. We have the usual commandment boards, and any pre-ecclesiological church, you'll have these, the commandment boards. And there's usually either side of a chancel arch, there is one, or as here, they are either side of the communion table. The actual communion area has been altered since the 18th century. The old rails have gone, unfortunately. The pews and pulpit are oak, silvered by centuries of sunlight. There is a cupboard here. Obviously it doesn't lock, but that's where they would keep valuables back in the day, before idiots broke into places and tried to steal stuff. Anyone who does it's an idiot, and well, and also a villain and a rogue. There's no electric light here, nothing to, well, almost nothing to break the feeling that this is an 18th century church, a church built long centuries ago, 1,000 years and more, and a church that still bears the feel of antiquity. So that is the inside here at St Michael's, Stragglethorpe. So just look all the way west. You see that wonderful Anglo-Saxon doorway. There's, of course, a fire extinguisher, because health and safety is a thing these days. Before that we have King George, George I, I believe, and his royal arms. Very fitting, of course, in a church where so much is Georgian. So there we are, and the safety rail for the parson as he ascends his mighty pulpit. Flat ceiling, typical of the period again. There is a medieval roof, no doubt, above. So let's go outside, shall we? And so outside at Stragglethorpe, again, see behind me this beautiful little building, very simple, early medieval, and it's so little change really over all the centuries. So we'll have a look around the outside and then the usual concluding remarks. So there we go, Stragglethorpe. And you can see here we've got this one big perpendicular window, and all the other windows are these little square ones. Probably, certainly a couple of them would have been adapted, or one of them had been adapted from a Lancet, but they've been put in as and when needed, which is fine, which is a good thing. The porch has what looks like Roman tile in it. They're probably, given the location, given of course Lincoln was a major Roman fortress, there's probably a Roman villa around here that they would have salvaged this from. No tower, of course, just this Victorian bellcote. It's an addition. It would have had some sort of belfry before, but it's been modified in this way. Now, as we go round, you may see in the distance, and I'll stop to give a look at that, the spire of Brant Broughton. But here we have a fairly modern sculpture of St. Michael. Just St. Michael, you can tell he's got wings. Michael, of course, is the angelic commander of heaven's armies. You see there was a window here, it's been blocked up by this being placed over it, and that's another reason we know that this is a later addition. Here's where the aisle has been added. See up there a few bits of Roman brick. So we carry on around. This area has been overgrown and cleared, and I'm not going to go too far into it because of issues, but you can see here in the distance that is the spire of Brant Broughton. Now, Brant Broughton and Stragglethorpe are very close, but there's a certain hazard getting between the two. It's called the A17, which is of course a very major road and a very busy one. So if you want to get between the two, you can, but it requires a great deal of patience and a ready foot on the accelerator. So that's Brant Broughton. Brant Broughton also has a lovely Quaker meeting house. So if you ever go to Brant Broughton, make sure you get the Quakers as well as the Anglican Church. There is some evidence here, you can see, of some subsidence. Such is life, unfortunately. And we're around here. You see there's no windows at all on the north side, just the door. And as we look around, you can see unobstructed fields all the way to Brant Broughton and beyond, so icy blast comes across here. Best not to have any north side windows. There is, of course, the east window in the aisle, but that's another matter entirely. It doesn't face north. East end, our two little early English Lancets. Very nice. And carrying on around, making sure we don't get the sun straight down the lens, because that will just give you lens flare, and lens flare has its place largely in J.J. Abrams' film, but that's not much entirely. Again, you can see here this crack. There's been some subsidence. East end trying to come away. Thing about medieval building is, of course, they didn't have structural surveys, and they certainly didn't have geological surveys before they started building. So they just went, oh, we'll try and build it here and hope, and we think this is a fairly decent piece of land, but we could be wrong. You can see the moss growing on the roof there. This is an ancient building, and it feels it. It is one of, well, we have this wonderful table tomb in front, and it's such a contrast from Brant Broughton. Brant Broughton is this whacking great, stupendous 14th century decorated church. That's a decorated heading for perpendicular. This is just this little building, single cell structure, that sits here in a farmyard, basically, just off the A17. As we've seen, well worth a visit. So that is Stragglethorpe, St. Michael's Stragglethorpe. And so there we have it, Michael's Stragglethorpe. It's a small building, it's fairly easy for me to fit it in to the final epilogue, as it were, or outro as they call it, of this video. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.